Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Worrall, and today I can't talk, but I am joined by Ian Macbeth. How are you, mate?
That's my favourite intro yet. Absolutely love that with the blah, 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 blah. Big
Yeah,
fan.
we're not going to edit that out, are we? Just
No,
roll with it.
no, we'll just roll with it. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. I've got my whole avocado group meet today, so we're going to be doing some training on. Funnily enough, it's linking to the guests that we've got on, but I'm doing a whole session on audio hacks, so how to get your video audio on point. So I'm sure we'll cover that a little bit with Adam later on when we discuss things. But yeah, some good stuff to focus on today. I'm looking forward to it. Seems like there's a lot of conferences popping around. It's like conferencey season now as well. I think PropX was on Friday. I didn't make it because I was racing, but from what I hear, good event, big screen. Did you go?
No, I've really fallen out of the habit of going to any estate agency conferences recently, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've not booked one for a good few years, and I've not been particularly inclined to book one either. I don't know why, because I quite enjoyed that sort of setting. But it's probably a post-COVID thing for me, actually, not been to any of those. You see the people and the popularity and comments of these days, so I probably should get back in the habit of doing it. But yeah, we're entering that season where there's one event or another, every few weeks, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And as long as people are getting something out of it and then implementing it, I think that's the main thing. But I'm enjoying my smaller mastermind type settings at the moment, learning from people in a smaller group personally.
I think maybe one a year is probably not too bad because you get sometimes you get a different perspective, but some of them are quite samey, aren't they? They are
Yeah.
quite samey. I've been doing my presentation for the EAX one, which is coming up next week, start of October. That's kind of hosted by Mark and Iceberg. And I'm on last actually, but I'm presenting under the hood is is all they've given me. So I could do anything really, but I'm going to really do an under the hood kind of uncoverage of where our wins have come from over the last 4 years. But Daniel Priestley is starting the conference off, so hopefully there'll still be some people hanging around for me at the end.
Well, he was on high. I'm most of the way through his interview on high performance. Actually, the podcast. He's a really interesting
Very
bloke
good.
to talk to. No big act to follow there, mate.
Yeah, I know. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Well, let's you're gonna talk about audio. I almost wish I was sat in your training this morning. We've got training as well this morning in a few minutes. But today's guest is someone that I've worked with for a couple of years now. Excellent at what he does on photography and videography. And I wanted to get him on because I think there's some value that he can bring in terms of just whether people are starting out, whether people are, at the top end of the game and wanting, some tips, but just talk us through before we introduce today's guest what you think the power of video and high quality marketing is and what it's done for your business. Because from the outside looking in, that is an absolute key cornerstone of everything that you do.
Yeah. I mean, I think marketing in this day and age, we know it's digital. So your shop window is your images you're putting on social media.
Yeah.
It's your images that are on the Rightmove app, because let's be honest, 80% of traffic is people
Yeah.
scrolling at home on their mobile. It's not their desktop anymore. So it is your shop window. It is what your brand is seen. And I think familiarity is so key for building trust with people. Familiarity is a really, really important thing. And I think that's why a guest like this, what we really don't focus enough on with our internal training and our industry training. For example, we were just talking about conferences. When was the last time you went to a conference and there was a videographer or a photographer up there giving estate agents tips on improving their standard in media? It isn't, is it? So this is something that people definitely can take, excuse me, more value from, and we should do more coaching and training on it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. As you're talking about, we use Adam for a lot of our stuff, but as you're talking about it, I think actually the team could benefit from some of that, even if it is just tips on your iPhone for social for your sneak
Yeah,
peek and all of that. So there's definitely a massive area of improvement as an industry we can make. I think we've advanced a lot, as with a lot of things in our industry, but I think there's still a long way to go. So shall we dive in and introduce today's guest?
let's do it.
Today's guest is the MD and owner of Northern Property Media. He's known in the northwest of England for creating high-end marketing assets, primarily for real estate agents. Adam Birkett, welcome to the World Class Real Estate Podcast. How are you, pal?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really well, thank you.
Good, good, good. Looking forward to this as someone who's quite into their videos and photography and graphics and stuff like that myself. But the first question, Adam, for you that we always kick off with is what does world-class real estate look like to you?
Um, there's a couple of things that immediately come to my background's obviously in media. So the first thing I suppose I would say is just exceptionally high quality marketing is going to be always really, really important. And consistency in your marketing, I think, is really important. And I think the very best agents that I work with are always exceptional where it comes to communication with clients, with sellers, and making sure that the level of stock on the board is completely manageable so that communication is exceptional. I think all the best agents that I work with tend to have those things really covered. Consistency in marketing is key to build a brand and to make that, synonymous with the brand of the agent. And then that high quality communication, and that comes from, I think, a manageable stock level. That for me, that's all in a nutshell.
Yeah, I agree on the high quality marketing. Do you think it's quite hard for estate agents though? Because most agents work on such a volume basis
Mm.
where it's kind of burn and churn almost a little bit. But to actually get all their media, or just take photography for the time being, all their property photos, which is arguably their shop window these days in the digital
Yeah.
age, is it hard for them to not just have vanilla photos? Because the difference of getting like a real high standard image that you could almost say that's my brand, the kit is quite expensive, and it also is quite technical, I find, as well, for people. So the easiest answer is to outsource it to someone like you, I appreciate, but without plugging it, what
Yeah.
would you say on a kind of burn and churn estate agency,
Well,
a
I think
corporate agent?
without wanting to sort of put myself out of work, I mean, the entry point, I think, for most technologies and medias is ever getting lower. You can pick up a good camera now, stick it in auto mode, and you can take some decent images. I think the actual bit where you're talking about branding and making that consistent and stand out for an agent, that comes not so much. I mean, there's some technique stuff in terms of taking the images, but actually there's so much that goes on in the post-production part of the process in terms of how you create edit presets, for example, that look like your brand. We've worked hard with brands over the years to develop, a style of photograph, and I don't necessarily mean in terms of how you take the photograph, but in terms of how you edit the photograph, that is consistent. And it's a very subtle thing, but people start to recognize when that photograph is, or start to recognize the brand because of the photos being consistently looking the same. And you get to a point, depending on what that style of photograph is, where people will recognize the listing being from a certain agent on Rightmove, for example, without knowing it's from that agent.
Yeah.
It's that the image consistency then brings that along. So it doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time, and with a thousand other things to do, it is difficult to carve out that time to develop skills and develop that side of things. Which I suppose, when it gets to the point where you can, that's when outsourcing becomes the obvious best thing to do.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You talk about the consistency, and I think that's so important. We've talked about it quite a lot recently about having that certain level of consistency in
Yeah,
what you put out, and I think that probably is the utopia that you mentioned for a lot of agents, that when you put something online, it's recognized as noticeably your brand.
mm.
Do you think that's hard for the volume agents to do simply because of the volume? And do you think agents deviate away from that strategy because sometimes estate agents will promise certain things to different clients to try and attract them? They might want a board on a
Yeah,
main road, that sort of
yeah.
thing. We've probably all been there as estate agents over the years. So how can agents build that consistency without trying to, you know, throw those extra little bits in. I think that's probably a challenge that a lot of listeners will have.
I think I totally get that thing, to get the gig, you want to sort of say, yeah, we'll do that. And also, if you offer inconsistent delivery on the marketing side of things, then you'll inevitably get a potential seller go, how come I'm not getting that when they had that, and all that kind of stuff. That's really difficult to negotiate. There's no question about it, because then you start thinking about maybe tiers of fee tiering or whatever it is, with different levels of marketing associated to each of those tiers. That's one way of approaching it. But I think to come back to your question with regards to volume agents, trying to get that consistency and build that level of brand, it really requires consistency in the output, which means that if you're listing, if you're a very high volume agent, you're doing 5 or 10 new listings a week, then you need to have the same person going and doing your marketing for you. If you just give it to James or Sharon in the office and whoever's got some time to go and take some photos, you're not going to have any consistency. There needs to be something. I know, Mark, that for a lot of your stuff, you use the same system, use the Giraffe system, for example, and that will give an element of consistency because you're using the same kit being operated in the same way. And that's something that any agent can do at any level, I think. Even if it's just with an iPhone, then there's certain apps out there that you can get which will give you consistency in terms of the way it takes photos, and it'll line it up for you and all that kind of stuff. Because without sending all of your agents or all of your team members to night school to learn photography, you're never going to get that level of consistency at a good enough level. It is really hard, inevitably, to start a new brand. Starting out as an agent for the first time and you're going for high volume. How do you get that consistency? It's really, really difficult. So the only way of doing it is to be consistent, and that's using the same piece of kit and using the same people to do it.
What does a night school course look like, out of interest?
So it's how I started, actually. So my background actually wasn't in photography until my wife got bored of me being at home and signed me up for a night course to do photography. She thought I'd enjoy it because I'm quite technical and quite creative. And she was bang on. I went and did a night school class near to where I am at a local college, which was one night a week for 2 hours in a classroom of 15 kind of budding or hobbyist photographers in a classroom setting. And it was, like, for me, it was just lighting a fuse. Like, I enjoyed it. Like, I loved it from the first moment. It was a mixture of classroom based and practical application. There was homework each week. There were, assignments and projects each term and all that kind of stuff. I was just completely obsessed that first year. I just never left the house without a camera in my hand or in my bag. So I'll be driving home from work and see a sunset and I'd pull over, or I took a million photos of my kids in that first couple of years or whatever it was. But it's a great way to get started if you can afford the time. But a couple of hours once a week is probably doable for most people, and it would give you an idea. It's not for everyone, obviously. It's like anything. Some people will love photography, some people won't enjoy it. But for the right person, for an estate agent or someone on the team who shows an interest in it, it's not a bad thing to do. Just to learn the basics of exposure and how to operate a camera. And well, if you learn the basics on a technical level, the rest of it is a creative thing. It's like being a writer. Your tools are your vocabulary and your grammar. It's the same sort of thing. You learn the technicals, and then it gives you the skills to then create. So it's not a bad way to get started.
And you talk about the technicals. I think that advice, by the way, just before, about if you are a volume agent, having the same person take the photos, I think that's a really simple thing that agents can take away and introduce into their business straight away. Really easy to do, and I think probably a lot have various different members of the team doing it. Let's talk about post-production a little bit, because you mentioned having edit presets and that side of things. You talked about night school. Was that how you learned that, and then that's developed over the years? But for the bog standard estate agent, how would you bog standard? That's a terrible word, isn't it? Sorry. But the high volume estate agent, how would you recommend that they go about being able to churn high volume out and create that consistency in the edit?
In terms of being able to get a churn going, it's not really the way we operate, but if that's the way that you want to sort of box it off, be consistent in terms of the way you actually shoot it, you start to nail down what angles in each what photos you want. Basically, you want a straight on front, you want an angle front, you want a corner of each room, you want a straight on of each room, whatever it is, you do all that. And so you minimize the number of photos to process. You're not just spray and praying, as we call it, just absolutely like taking thousands of photos and go, yeah, which ones are we actually trying to find here? You're being a bit more discerning about your photos in the first place. So you might only have 50 photos to edit rather than 200. That's helpful to start off with. In terms of the post-production, I never learned any post-production in a formal setting. The photography courses are all about shooting. And there's actually quite a good method of doing it, because there's a kind of photographer's rule that if you can get it right in camera, there's a lot less to do afterwards. Now, modern cameras are, the way that they take photographs gives you a lot of leeway. So actually you can really mess up the photo and recover quite a lot in post-production, whether that be in terms of photoshopping, and AI is now a huge part of how we particularly how we remove items out of photos that we don't want there. But in terms of the actual how to make the photo look good, I mean, it's the same as putting a photo on Instagram. When you go to share an image on Instagram, you get a choice of presets. That's not a bad place to start. If you use a basic photo editing piece of software, I use the Adobe suite, so I use Lightroom. And if I wanted to, there are just nowadays there's thousands of recommended presets based on the photo. So you'll look at the photo and go, I think you should use that, or you should use that, you should use that. And it's just click and play. It's really, really easy. That's not how we edit, because we've developed our own edit presets over years of what we'd think our clients like and what they want, and that can be bespoke between the different clients that we work for. But to start off with, high volume, if you want to turn around photos quickly in post-production, there's lots of tools to help you do it. Even things like geometry. Geometry is a big thing in real estate photography. Getting your verticals vertical, getting horizontals right, making sure that everything's not skew with. No matter how it takes a long time to get very, very good at getting that right in camera. So to start off with, if you're not a professional, you will be getting that wrong. But nowadays, instead of messing around in Lightroom and trying to work out your geometry, which is an absolute mind bender, you can just press a little button, magic wand, and it's just figure it out for you. So technology is really helping in that response, and it means that your processing, your actual overall production of the image, from taking the photo to delivering it to your client, can be a lot easier.
On the front shot, Adam, because that's the
money shot.
Hook. It's the hook, isn't it? It's the money shot. Yeah, it's the reason why someone is stopped scrolling on Rightmove or Zoopla or Facebook or wherever, your website. What would be your kind of golden rules on that? I mean, I've from an early age, I was given some golden rules on a front shot, but I'd be keen to kind of know what you think from I'm here, this is what I'm going to do with the front here.
Well, some really basic ones in terms of taking the photograph to start off with. The first thing is get as far back as you can. So the further back you are from a property, the more that the angle between you as the photographer and the front of the house is level. Now, if you're here, then you're looking up like that at the house. So it's quite difficult. So all your geometry is going to be off, and you have to do a lot to fix it. And what happens is you lose things like roof angle. So if you're looking up it, you might not see the roof at all. You see like this slab of brick at the front, for example. Whereas if you stood back here, you get the very best angle. So if that means taking the photo from across the road, for example, then do it. Wait for the cars to go and take the photo from the front of the road. The other thing is the geometry side of it. So I always think that the most powerful front shot is a square on. But it depends on the house to an extent, but a square on one makes the house look quite handsome and quite strong and bold, because it's symmetrical. And there's something about the human mind that looks at a symmetrical, strong image and goes, wow, that looks impressive.
Imposing.
If you were taking a picture, imposing, if you were taking a picture of Buckingham Palace, you wouldn't do it from an angle because it looked banging from the front. Yeah. And it's the same in any house. That's the second thing. The next thing I would do is not particularly worry about the weather. You can take that photo in any weather, because we can process things in post-production to make it look nice. I would never, so misrepresentation is important. There's golden rules as photographers that we don't change things that aren't really not there. So for example, we wouldn't change the front door, or we wouldn't change the color of the garage, or all that kind of stuff. But what we can do is realistic. In my view, and other photographers might have different views on this, my personal view is I don't mind changing things that could be possible. So for example, if it's a dark and gloomy sky, I will replace the sky. And that's pretty easy to do these days. I mean, when I started off doing that, a sky replacement would take me hours because I would have to manually cut around trees and lampposts and all the rest of it, and then replace the sky on a layer in
Yeah, I've done
Photoshop.
it.
Now it's like sky
Especially in autumn
replacement.
when there's no leaves on the tree and you've got to go around all
Oh,
the little branch bits. It's the worst
I
thing in
mean,
the world.
I'll always be grateful for that. When that function came in, I felt like throwing a party. Honestly, that changed my life. Changed from a 3 hour edit on a photograph to a 3 second edit on a photograph. So my workflow just went woof. So for example, change the skies, because that's, yeah, all right, the sky wasn't blue on the day they took the photo, but it could have been.
Mm.
I'm okay with that. That's my own personal. Everyone's different on that. So those little things make the how make sure exposure is right is the other thing. Don't have a dark photograph. Don't have a blown out, overly bright photograph. Make sure it stands out, and then be consistent with that. Always get a nice square on front image, and that's the beginning of your consistency in your brand. If you're doing that on every single property, and then you list it as your first photograph on Rightmove, so someone sees them, subconsciously people go, "Ah, that's those guys," because they always do that photo. So that'll be my top tips really on the front shot. What else? Oh, a couple of things. Make sure windows are shut. That always looks better. Don't have windows open on the front. Make sure doors are shut. Make sure the doormat's out of the way. Get rid of bins. Clear clutter. Make it look clean. Obviously, I mean, it goes without saying, but no vehicles on the driveway. I think that's it, really.
It still mystifies me why estate agents take photos of properties with cars on the drive. We've always said as a business we sell houses, not cars. And you mentioned about getting as far back as you can for that front photo. What about the power of aerial externals? How
Yeah.
important, if that is a possibility, do you think that is?
I don't have the stats to hand, but I know the stats are really, really strong when it comes to aerial photography. And there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, it's a differentiator in terms of amateur photography and professional photography. To fly drones, or decent drones, I mean, you can fly decent drones now without proper licensing, but you have to be a qualified drone pilot to fly these things properly. So straight away, it's a differentiator. If you're betting drone pilot, then it goes, oh, they're getting pros in. That's the first thing. The imagery is really good. It gives you a completely different perspective, particularly with regards to context. So what we like to do with the overhead stuff and the aerial photography is show what's in the local area. So if there's a local park, or it's a 5 minute walk from a local school, or the village centre is only a 10 minute walk away, show that relative to the property. That's stuff you can't do from the ground. You can maybe talk about in the particulars. You could maybe mention it if you're doing a presenter video, but doing aerial photography really shows where it is in context to its surroundings, particularly if it's in green area. You want to show that it's secluded. You want to show that it's beautiful out the back or whatever. That's really important. Secondly, as you mentioned, in terms of that front shot, if you've got a tricky house to shoot, then using a drone can be quite useful. It doesn't happen often, if I'm honest. I'll always err on the side of ground-based photography if I can, because the camera that I've got on my tripod is always going to be better than a camera that I've got in the air. Just by the very limitations of flying a camera, it's not going to be technically as good. So I'd always choose ground-based photography unless I can't. Now, as you say, you might not be able to. You might not be able to get back far enough, or whatever, in which case getting a drone up and getting the angle that you need, great.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Mark, you go.
No, I was just going to talk about the drone actually a little bit off topic. When we were together last week, I forgot to tell you that the farmer threatened to shoot the drone out the air, but that's another story. So
it wouldn't be the first time I've been threatened. People are getting more and more twitchy about drones and privacy, which is completely understandable. It's the importance of licensing and knowing what you're doing, and knowing what the drone code is, and knowing what the rules are in terms of flying over other people's properties and all that stuff. If you take liberties, you will get into trouble. And I'd lose my license, so I've got to be very, very careful. It's getting more and more people are being a bit twitchy about it, because there's more and more cowboys flying drones who shouldn't be. Actually, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot more drones out and about these days, I think.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things, the access point's getting lower. You can now get decent drones that weigh less than 250 grams, which means you only need a very, very basic license to fly that.
Yeah, we my all my self-employed agents have got drones that exactly those 249 grams, and as
Yeah.
long as they've got the correct insurance on it and the correct sticker on it, you're basically good to go. You know, it's
Yeah. The,
4K
the
camera.
theory is you can't do that much damage with a drone that weighs 250 grams. Yeah. Okay. You
You
could do
can.
some damage, you know.
But it's
You
right.
wouldn't
I
want to
think,
fly over. You wouldn't want to fly over a festival of people and actually accidentally ditch it into the crowd. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, personally, I've flown them multiple times, but I don't feel overly comfortable flying them when there's cars around and
Hmm.
people around and stuff like that. I'd much rather.
Trees, that's the big one.
Yeah, trees. You know, we've lost a few in trees. There's quite a few hanging up in trees.
We've all been there.
What I was going to say in terms of sort of going back on the front shot and talking about edits and presets, just for people that maybe haven't got Adobe as a suite,
Hmm.
haven't used Photoshop or Lightroom,
Hmm.
um, just sort of bringing that back in. Would you advise them? Would you say it's worthwhile having someone like yourself come in and almost create the preset for the admin? You know, if it's
Hmm.
the admin that's doing the edit back in the office,
Yeah.
would you advise that maybe someone like yourself, and you don't really see photographers or sort of too much training in a state agency on
Yeah.
photography and this aspect of it, but
Well, this is it's a good point, this. I think when you're marketing an asset that's worth a six-figure or seven-figure sum, and you're sending someone who's got no idea what they're doing out with a phone to take photos of it to then market it on the internet, it baffles me that anyone would do that and not see the importance of good marketing content. It is your, as you said earlier, it's your shop. It is your shop window for that property. So get it looking as good as you possibly can. One of the services that we've offered and continue to offer is like a one-off training session for agents, for example, where we will come in and train whoever is going to be operating the camera kit or whoever's going to be editing it or responsible for creating images. And we'll show them basic stuff in terms of either putting what their workflow should be in terms of post-production, or we'll go out on a shoot with them and teach them how to take better photographs. You don't need the Adobe suite to edit. That happens to be the tool that I use as a professional. I use it all day. But you could do it on an iPhone, for example. Apple Photos has got basic editing facilities where you just bring the shadows up and bring the you just mess on the basics basically on your
yeah.
exposure stuff. But people don't know how to do that because, especially in a world of Instagram filters, where you just go, "Oh, that one looks nice." Actually, you don't understand how to make photos look right and start developing a signature style. So, yeah, it might maybe if you're not in a position where you're have budget and not charging fees where you can legitimately get professionals in to take your imagery, then maybe consider a one-off training session. That might be something just to get someone up and running.
And I'd be interested to know sort of the price of, an iPhone, let's
Mm,
call this effectively that's a £1,500 camera and video camera.
yeah.
I there is a balance for where if I set that iPhone up on a £120 gimbal, and it's got a
Hmm.
built-in gimbal in it now anyway,
Hmm.
and I set it to 4K and 60 frames per second,
Hmm.
what level of price point does a camera become better? Because I can set it to widescreen mode. I can
Yeah.
get all the internals. If I control it slowly and I've got my angles correct,
Hmm.
I'm 4K 60 frames per second. And I I think most agents will find it difficult to go, how do I beat that on volume without spending X on a lens, and then I need three different lenses for different stuff. Need a gimbal, need the camera equipment, need to
Hmm.
then get the training on how to work it because it's quite technical.
Hmm.
Need to go for an hour of not throwing the gimbal out the window while I'm trying to set it up and level it out because that's the biggest pain in the ass other than doing my girl's hair in the morning. That's one of my biggest challenges in life. So what do you think on that sort of price point
It's a
and
really
tech?
good question. Now, I think I don't know much about anything outside the Apple sort of world. I'll be honest. I'm an iPhone user. The most up-to-date iPhones have camera capability that is extremely, extremely good. There are entire communities of professional photographers, particularly the other side of the pond in America, who use their iPhone for all of their real estate capture at a high-end professional level. It's, from my perspective, to be completely honest with you, I would consider using an iPhone 16 Pro or something like that. If it weren't for the fact that if you turn up for a shoot and you're charging decent fees for it and you're with an iPhone, it's not a great look. There's almost like you need to turn up with some pro kit element to it in my head. So the capabilities of the camera on there, now everything's dumbed down on an iPhone for a low entry point. So you open your camera app on an iPhone, for example, and the controls within that, there's not a lot of scope for really controlling things. Whereas if you download other apps, you can spend like 15 quid on a camera app on an iPhone, which will give you full manual control, for example. So you can control your exposure, and actually you can shoot it in RAW. So RAW file is like a high data. It basically has all the data from the photograph. If you shoot in JPEG, the best analogy is a JPEG is like a pre-baked cake. All the ingredients have been baked by the phone and decided how that JPEG is going to look, and therefore it's quite difficult to edit it afterwards. A RAW file is like just the raw ingredients. You can do anything with it. So the difference in file size, a JPEG is probably 3 or 4 meg. A RAW file is about 30 meg, so 10 times the amount of data. So you can do loads and loads of stuff in post-production. So that's one tip, actually. Like if you're shooting your iPhone, shoot in RAW. And actually you can do that in your camera app at the top where it says, what does it say? Let me check. At the top, I'll either say there's a little thing in the corner. I don't know if you can see that at the top right. There's a thing that says RAW, and I've crossed it out. You just tap that, and it goes to RAW, and there you're shooting in RAW. It'll take up a lot of space on your phone, but if you just ditch them after you've used them, that's quite a useful thing. So to come back to your question, you have got a 1,500 quid camera in your pocket. It's all software based. At the end of the day, the sensor behind one of these lenses is about 5mm, whereas the sensor in my camera is 35mm. So the amount of light and data my camera can capture versus this is massive. However, software in these is so clever, it can basically generate images that make it look like it's being photographed on a 35mm sensor. Don't get sold by this megapixel thing. Any pro photographer will tell you that megapixels is a myth. The number of megapixels does not make a camera better. It's about the quality of the megapixels and the size of the pixels. Completely different to the number of pixels. In fact, the more pixels you've got, the more noise and distortion you get, particularly in low light. So it's all rubbish.
What would that cost someone? The difference of the 5 to the 35, or the difference of that standard. What's that going to set someone back in money?
In my opinion, that would be everything that you need, and until you're willing to spend maybe £2,000 to £3,000 on a camera body, and then you're probably going to spend £2,000 to £3,000 on the lenses, and then you've got your accessories on top of that. I mean, a pro camera setup you can do for, obviously there's ways of doing it for less, but my camera bag's probably 15K's worth of stuff, but that's for a number of different eventualities, and that's just for real estate. That's not including all my kit for, whatever else. So
I was thinking it's the difference of an iPhone and 10 grand is kind of where we're roughly talking here.
Let's say if you were being conservative and you wanted to process and you wanted to do secondhand kit, you could probably do all that for 3 to 5 grand. As an intermediate. If you wanted to go the full hog, you'd be looking at 10 grand for all the kit that you'd need. A lot of it is the lenses. People don't realize how expensive the lenses, particularly actually for real estate, the ultra wide lenses. And that's another thing it's worth mentioning, is that if you've got an iPhone with 2 or 3 lenses on the back, go as wide as you can. You shoot in real estate, the wider the better, because it makes the rooms look bigger. But when you're translating that into a proper camera, you're just looking at ultra wide lenses and high quality sharp lenses. I mean, the lens I use for my own stuff is a couple of £1,000 with the lens, and that's just one. And I've got I don't know how many.
It's why I never touch the camera back. That is.
It's all insured, Mark. Don't worry.
Let's talk briefly about video, because I'm just a bit conscious of time, and we've talked in depth about quality photography. I completely agree with Ian. That is your shop window in this day and age.
If I could just make one more point before we move on the photography, just very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
That front shot, that money shot, that window shot, it's also just worth considering, like, how to differentiate, particularly as we come into the winter months. Try and get twilight photography. Looking at your front now. That's not necessarily easy to do unless you know how, but actually just a basic sort of, as it's just going dark shot with all the lights on, will be a brand in itself, even if it's not taken brilliantly. If you get a pro to do it, then great. But even if you can just do that yourself, as we come into the winter months where you can take that shot at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, get down there and get that shot, because that is a brand shot before you've even gone anywhere and tried to do anything unique. And you'll notice a lot of agents don't think about it or don't think it's possible or whatever. But it's it's not so much fun when you're in June and you stood out there at 11 o'clock at night waiting for the sun to go. But, in the winter months, then give it a go.
Yeah, and those stats on Rightmove are mightily impressive on Twilight. 40% more clicks on a Twilight photo, I think, is the stat that
I think it's higher than that. I think it's 70-something%. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
76% off the top of my head. Higher click-through rate of a Twilight shot.
I was supposed to bring you a brochure to this podcast.
So was I.
Right, video. So if photographs is your shop window, then maybe video is the bit that grabs the attention and keeps a potential viewer's interest longer. Talk to us on video at the highest level. Talk to us about why you think cinematic presenter-led videos are the way to go for your high-end stuff.
So I think when you're marketing prestige homes, you're trying to create something more than just information and detail. So the photos, and there's 2 types of photos we do. There's the wide stuff and there's some lifestyle stuff. The wide stuff is information, basically. It is detail. The lifestyle photography shows more aspirational kind of stuff. And that's what we try and do with the video at high-end prestige level. You're trying to show an environment and an ambience that hooks into people's subconscious and makes them go, I want that life. Not I want that home, I want that life. That's what high-end video is all about. So it's about creating something that is moving, magical, emotional, and shows them something that's not already being shown in the particulars, in the floor plan, and in the photos, to be honest. There's no point in going on a video and going, this house is near here, it's got 5 double bedrooms, and blah, blah. It's boring, it's information that's already in the listing. What's important is talking about how it makes people feel, because that's what people will buy houses for. It's the feel they have. So it's trying to get them that feel of the property before they've even walked through the door. Now, obviously, it would be wonderful if it would be possible to have a video on every property, but because it kind of does that thing. But obviously, it's likely, certainly professionally produced video is going to be limited to the high-end stuff. So I think use that opportunity to show something you're not showing in the rest of the marketing is absolutely what I'd say. Now, there's different levels of doing this. You could just do a really cool reel on Instagram. It shows you something. That's not really hitting the mark for me in terms of the lifestyle thing, the aspiration thing, because you need a bit more time and quality, I think, to really get that feel across. You need an amazing videographer. And it's a really hard job being a videographer for this sector, because you've got 2 or 3 hours on site. You've never seen the set before. There's loads of limitations, and you've got to turn this thing into a piece of magic. And the edit is hard. It's time consuming. So get a great videographer to do this. If you're working at high end, that is absolutely critical. You can't really busk this with an iPhone. That is for sure. And it needs to be a combination of aerial content, of close-up content, of detail, and of the sense of the room being of showing the detail of the room, if that makes sense. And that just comes with experience. It comes with excellent production and technical skill. And yeah, get someone good.
And the same sort of thing about brand consistency, so that you have certain elements of that your brand show through, and then at the lower end have the same person do it if you are doing those reels on Instagram.
Exactly the same principles apply. Always try your best to be consistent in your output. And actually with video, as you know, Mark, working with you over the last couple of years, it's been about trying to develop a style which is synonymous with your brand. And so we try and do the same little things in each video, or even to the way that you script, or the way you sign off, or the way you say hello at the beginning of the video. Be consistent in what you create, a brand in that sense. Always have the same person in the video, the same presenter. That's the brand.
Yeah, we've built a business. You don't know our business, Adam, but we built a business on um, exactly that effectively. So we have self-employed agents, and we teach them Premiere Pro. We teach them how to create landscape storytelling videos and
Hmm.
portrait videos as well. And then they kind of create their own identity within it. But the
Right.
theme with each videos for us is we kind of intro the front of the house,
Yeah.
often with a little bit of drone imagery over
Hmm.
B-roll over the top of the vocal. Then we do kind of three key points around the area. Then we come back and show the kind of key feature of the house, work through the house, and then end on another key feature with a call to action at the end. And we
Yeah.
try and keep those all down to about 2 minutes so that
That's the
it's
money. Yeah. Two
yeah.
minutes is bang on.
But we found that for the benefit of a right move, landscape and a YouTube hosted video is required there. But actually, if you really want to push, this is not for the property, this is for your business. If you really want to push your own personal brand and your company brand out there, those Instagram reels and those shorter 35, 40 second things are really, really good for your own company. They won't
100%.
necessarily, they won't necessarily get you the house sold, but
Yeah.
they will get more traffic to your
Really, really good
Instagram
point, that.
or your Facebook.
Because Instagram Reels and stuff absolutely have a place in all this, and I didn't mean to say that they're a waste of time. They just are a different asset. They're a really useful asset, as you say, for the agent brand, as opposed to selling the property. You can't get across what you want to on an aspirational lifestyle video on a reel, but what you can get across is, look what we're doing and look at our activity. Isn't this house amazing? As an agent, and being consistent on that as well is important.
Yeah, it feels like the world has it keeps tossing and turning, but it feels like the world has moved fully into portrait. You know,
Yeah.
it feels like that's happened, and it's just the way we've gone with the
I know,
how we
and
do
it's
phones and
upsetting.
stuff.
It's upsetting as a film producer, but it is the way of the world. And actually, you've got to embrace it. And a number of agents that we work for now, we actually produce sort of very candid, different style, sort of quite Instagram reel friendly kind of content, but it is still quite lifestyle and aspirational. So it's all portrait. So we film in portrait as opposed to filming in landscape. And the production value is still extremely high, but it's a different kind of style that works on socials. So there's more than 100 ways to skin that cat. You know, there's a number of ways of creating really, really good content, and all of the agents that we work for have a different preferred way of having their videos. And I don't think we make two videos the same for two different agents. You know, because it becomes a calling card. It becomes on brand. It's really easy to brand video, much more than photograph.
Yeah,
Much more than photograph.
yeah, no, definitely. I think people there's levels obviously of everything, and in video, you know, the difference of a 4 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 is huge. It is huge.
It
But I
is.
think for estate agents that are listening that have enjoyed kind of the conversation, just getting these days with a decent iPhone, just getting to the point of feeling comfortable being on camera. I mean, funnily enough, I've got a Rode Video Mic Me next to my camera. I always keep one of these on me. You know,
Yeah.
it's just straight plug in, decent audio. We haven't spoke about audio. It's probably another subject altogether, but that is also vital in what we're talking about here, especially if you're presenting. But just to have my phone on me because the base rate has been held, or you know, the news update of mortgages have gone to 3%
Yeah.
something rather than 4, to just
Yeah.
bang that into my phone, do a 30-second update and post it. You know, if I want to
Yeah.
do the camera setting in cinematic or something like that, so it's a bit blurred behind me, cool. If I don't, it doesn't really matter. But the main thing is just getting comfortable, getting
You're
yourself out
absolutely right.
there with the right kit. That's 60 quid on Amazon. You know, it's not too complex.
As I say earlier, you know, the actual entry point is really low, and it's the same not just for cameras and lenses, but also like for audio equipment and gimbals and you know, camera. And actually, if it's that sort of content, it doesn't need to be high production. It's all about your face being out there and supporting your brand. So yeah, I remember what someone saying to me is like, do a live every single day. Every single day, just make sure you jump on and say something about what you're doing with your business.
Yeah.
And that is your brand being built straight up. And if you've got a little mic or whatever, then the production's gonna be better anyway.
Yeah, I agree, because I think where estate agents get scared here is they get they get an Adam or his team to come out on this big, lovely house. You know, they don't want to ruin it. It's 1.25 million. You get some cameras thrown in your face and you're mic'd up. And that's scary. Like I've probably done 10,000 videos and presented 10,000 videos plus. That's still intimidating when someone shoves a camera in your face and
It
says,
sure is. It
you
sure
know,
is. But it's like the first time you do it, that's the worst video you'll ever make.
yeah,
And it'll only get better. It's like anything. How can you expect to be a good presenter on video if you've never done it before? The only way of getting good at it is by doing it. That is literally the only way of doing it. The other thing just to consider is the whole presenter video thing. I know it has its place and we do it for a lot of our clients, but we're also moving away from it in certain areas and doing different types of video, which is still with sort of people content. It's not just tours, you know. So, for example, I really like this style that we've been developing for a year or so now, which is actually two people from the agency going around the house and chatting with each other. So the style is not presenter, but it gets the same information across in a much more candid, informal way. And it means that people aren't comfortable being on camera and presenting and delivering a scripted piece of dialogue. Instead, you're just saying, guys, ignore the camera, pretend we're not here, act as if you're giving each other a viewing around the house. And be funny and say whatever you think and point out things that you think might well be interesting for people to know about. And you just go and do that. And that's a really cool style without having to get over that barrier of getting good at presenting.
Yeah, I got two guys, Matt and Matt on socials, Matt and Matt in Wokenham, and they're a combo and they do exactly that sort of setup. And it's been very interesting to see that type of response of the both of them kind of in that conversational sort of way.
I think it's actually quite progressive as well. I think it's much more Instagram friendly.
Yeah.
I think it's much more modern internet friendly. It's more authentic. I think people have bullshit detectors, you know, and they can tell when it's scripted or not genuine or whatever. Whereas actually, if none of it is scripted and it's people genuinely reacting to what they're seeing in front of them, people can feel that authenticity. Yeah. And I think that in a world full of in a world of a lack of authenticity, that goes a long way. People get that.
Yeah. People switch off to being oversold to, you know, it's just the way it is. If someone does a telesales on me and they're straight into the oversell, I'm not interested.
Yeah, see you later.
You know, we watch Sky Plus on record and we skip the adverts. It's just how we're built now. You know, no one looks at the right hand side of Google because we know it's all ads. It's just built in us now. And if you start your video with this beautiful, amazing, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, do what, mate? I'm not interested.
Exactly. And it worked 5 years ago. It was the way you did things, and we were doing presenter videos at every single level. Now, more and more clients are keen to sort of move away from presenter and try something new, you know.
Yeah, totally agree. No, great tips there.
Yeah, great tips. So many options, so much. I think we could talk all day, but I think we probably should wrap it there. Thank you very much, Adam. Loads of tips for agents who, you know, whether they want to get started at the bottom end, whether they want to get started at the top end. I think hopefully that's been useful for.
And I will say as well, if there's anyone listening, agents who want just some advice or a quick chat, then, you know, I'm sure if you guys forward my details or whatever, I'm happy to just have a chat with anybody who needs a bit of advice.
Brilliant.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Right, Adam, thank you very much. I might message you afterwards about the internal training for my gang. I'm sure there'll be some other agents listening as well. And appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
A massive thank you once again to Adam Birkett from Northern Property Media for joining us today. Ian, as we said in the intro, I think it's so important to get this right. But actually, Adam gave a few little golden nuggets that estate agents at any level can just take and implement. How did you think the interview went today?
Yeah, I loved it. I love the photography stuff, actually, because I'm glad we focused a lot on that, because I think it gets dismissed a little bit. And what he said about where he's talking about production, effectively what he means is the edit, you know, the bit at the end. And I think it's so easy these days to go from 4 to 8, 4 to 6 out of 10 standard by just spending 30 minutes on YouTube and learning how to play with Photoshop or Lightroom. And then the more you do it, the quicker you are. And it's not a difficult skill, you know, it's not a difficult skill. And I think one of the little things that I'll implement and I'll take away and I'll use today at today's session is the Twilight stuff. You know, that's a little relevant tip where you think, oh yeah, it is getting to autumn now, and the sunset is coming down earlier. And there's been some amazing sunsets as well, where there's been
Yeah, it
clear
has. Yeah,
skies. I know it's a miserable day today, but there's been some incredible ones. And you think, oh, that was a great opportunity. The clear sky today is going to be a beautiful sunset. That house deserves that photo. And if it's going to get traffic increase at 76%, like he said, and it stands you out from the crowd and the case study works, it's worth the 15-minute effort to go snap, I think. So
yeah.
that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, I've been out there at 10:30, 9:30 over the summer getting those images, and not only does it look awesome on Rightmove, your clients love it. Easier now, but if you're willing to go out and do it in the summer, clients absolutely love it. So yeah, that for me, my biggest. Well, I've got two actually. The raw files on your iPhone, and that is very valuable. I think if you're wanting to improve your edit, that will no doubt have it. But his answer to world-class real estate is something that probably isn't talked about a lot. And he talked about the power of good communication coming from not taking on too many properties, basically, at a time where estate agents are holding the most stock that they've held for 8 years or something like that. I think that's a real key lesson that we might have glossed over, but I think people should take from today's episode and, just take it on board. You don't want to be taking on every single property in this market, in my opinion, because that's when you won't be world class, because that communication won't be good enough. You just don't have enough time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a place for world-class estate agency, and there's a place, and there will always be a place, whether we like it or not, for corporate volume vanilla agency.
Yeah.
And we just have to separate them in the same way that if someone's going out for dinner, they're either going out for dinner because they want to pop to Nando's, or they're going Michelin star. It doesn't mean one is right or wrong. It's just that's the experience that people are looking for, and they're happy to pay for the different level. Same as going on holiday. You got a 20 grand holiday and a 2 grand holiday. Yeah, quite happy with either because you've made the decision that's what you're going with, and it's the same for agency. So, but you can't be in both camps. That's the key thing. And I think what Adam's talking about there in the media is, what brand are you setting your stall out for? What is your fee? What is your service? What is your shop window? And that comes back to your standard, in how he described things. So yeah, brilliant episode. I hope people take a lot from it, because I know I did. So yeah, definitely a win today, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll drop Adam's website into the show notes as well. So if people do want to contact him, or of course, they can reach out to us. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social, share it with colleagues. I'm Mark Worrall. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers, gang.